a lot of the debate treats as axiomatic that regulation is primarily a cost to doing business, which then needs to be justified in some way or other, or maybe cannot be justified. And of course, on the leave side, the argument is that leaving Europe would allow the UK to unshackle itself from these costs of doing business. Now, it seems to me that treating regulation axiomatically as above all a cost of doing business is very much like treating traffic rules axiomatically above all as a cost of driving. That's sort of true in a narrow sense. Traffic rules, prevents you from driving in certain ways, requires you to drive in other ways, or cycle or walk, or what have you. But to see traffic rules primarily as a cost of driving is just not to get what they're about. Traffic rules are a tool we have as a society to try to make traffic safer, smoother, maybe in some cases fairer or fair. And what I submit to you is that that's also the right way to think about business regulation. So, just to explore that analogy a little bit, why is it that traffic rules are a tool for facilitating traffic, not make it costly? There's sort of three reasons that economists might categorize it into. There are externalities. The way you drive has effects on others. You can make others unsafe as well as yourself if you speed, for example. There's an informational function of traffic rules. It is useful to have road markings and signage that tells you where you go, what you should expect from other drivers, whether you are likely to be overtaken or not. So one of the functions is to bridge informational gaps and fill informational lacunas. And the final function is one of coordination. So different countries have different rules about whether you have to drive on the right or on the left. And it doesn't really matter all that much which rule is adopted, but it really does matter that a rule is adopted because the benefits of coordinating on one side or the other is just huge. So externalities, information, and coordination are these three main functions of traffic rules. And the same is true for business regulation. And as any economist will tell you, those are the three main things that make free market solutions not work very well. If there are externalities, people consume or produce too much or too little. If there are information asymmetries, people might not get what they think they're getting. It will act as a transaction cost because you have to find out what it is, or you might just refrain from buying something because you're not sure about the quality. And famously, George Akerlof, the American economist, proved in that article called The Market for Lemons, that if information asymmetries are serious enough, markets may not exist at all. And finally, coordination, sort of a game theoretic point that there are many situations where it benefits everyone to be doing the same thing, more or less no matter what exactly that thing is. And it's easy to find examples in business and production and consumption where these apply. In terms of externalities, we can stick with the road and talk about cars. There are safety standards on cars, there are pollution standards on cars, in order that we can control what these external effects might be. Information, one example that struck me a couple of weeks ago when the BBC was running a Brexit report, and in an admirably impartial way, they interviewed a salmon smoker who complained about some stupid EU rule which required him to put on the label the allergen information that this product contains fish, that smoked salmon contains fish. So everyone has a good laugh. But the point is that we probably do want food labeling. We do want the labels to provide the relevant information to whoever buys the food so they can know what's in there. Then we can quarrel about what exactly that information should be. But we do need something, and given that we need something, there's really no cost difference in terms of what exactly you put on the label. Whether you print one thing or another, you have to print them anyway. And this particular smoked salmon producer complained that a new rule meant that you had to throw away all these old labels, which just makes me wonder how long in advance he had printed them. Finally, coordination. Again, we can think of lots of examples, in terms of traffic rules. It is really rather useful that most of Europe uses similar traffic signs. For all of us who have ever been a tourist or a business traveller by car in another European country. But my favourite example is a story that my colleague Philip Stevens at the Financial Times likes to tell, which is the story of the 1988 Lawnmower Noise Directive, which in the early 90s caused quite a dust-up in some British political circles when it turned out that dastardly bureaucrats or Eurocrats in Brussels were putting limits on how noisy the good British people's lawnmowers could be. And so there was a whole little scandal, and people started investigating, and it turned out that not only had the British government known about it, not only had the British government not opposed it, but it was in fact an idea that was proposed by the British government in the first place, and it was British officials who had steered the whole passage of the directive through. And the reason was because the German government had put in place national noise limits on lawnmowers, presumably for perfectly good reasons about not disturbing the Sunday peace and so on, and maybe to keep particularly noisy British-produced lawnmowers off the market. And so it was at the behest of British manufacturers that the British government pushed this directive through. But again, the economic case for it, while it was driven by self-interest, is perfectly good. It is that it makes sense to have a common set of rules. And maybe you can quarrel about exactly what the best optimum noise level is, but it's much better for everyone to have a level playing field. Now, all of this means that why there should be a debate on what the best regulations are, the ones most conducive to business, regulations most conducive to business. There can't be very much of a debate that regulations will have to be very, very, very bad to be worse than having no regulations at all. And it's rather surprising, I think, that this country, above all, seems to miss that point of the debate. This is, after all, the country of Thomas Hobbes, who built a whole theory of the state on the basic premise that any system of laws, no matter how tyrannical, is better than no system of laws and total anarchy. Because the state of nature is a war of all against all, and you know all the quotes. And Hobbesian theory is the foundation of social contract theory. So it's something that is actually very much, the importance of rulemaking is very much a British, an English and British tradition. I think this matches very much to the broader debate about the economic consequences of leaving or staying in. That discussion has been predominantly driven by an argument about the benefits of trade. In the one serious economic study which is ambivalent about the economic consequences of Brexit, all the other serious ones are negative. The Open Europe one is the one quality work that has a range from positive to negative. But they only get to their positive number by having small but negative trade effects and a positive effect of deregulating in their optimal scenario after Brexit, which outweighs the cost on the trade side. So the deregulation argument is important in the serious economic debate, in that it is the one thing, on the assumption most favourable to the leave side, that could generate a result in which leaving has a net positive economic outcome. Now, I'm afraid I missed Raoul's keynote earlier today about the Open Europe's quantification of this cost of regulation, but it's been circulating in the debate, and I've read it, and he's not here, so he can't defend himself. But if I misquote or misrepresent it, please let me know. But basically what Open Europe does, in order to find that deregulation could maybe gain you something like 1.5% of GDP, is to look at the 100 regulations, EU-derived regulations, that on the government's cost-benefit analysis create the biggest cost. On the whole, of course, the same analysis say that on net they're a benefit. So they have to do some fancy footwork to say that, well, you could cut the cost and the benefits aren't really real, you wouldn't lose benefits because they're not there. But I'm going to put that to one side, and I just want to think about this way of counting the cost of regulation. You know, I do want to emphasize that these are the government's own estimates, so I find it a bit strange when some Brexit campaigners, and I certainly don't have Open Europe in mind, but some people in the Brexit campaign take that figure to their credit while they dismiss other government-generated estimates of costs and benefits. But there you have it. Now, Roel has gone through what some of these are, so I'm not going to go through the detail. What I want to suggest is that a cost-benefit analysis of that kind just doesn't get at the effect of regulations on the economy. And one reason which I don't want to go into is that measuring costs and benefits is really hard, even if you think that's the way to do it. But the broader question is that it doesn't really capture what the true benefit of good regulation is. It doesn't take into account the point I made a few minutes ago that pretty much any set of regulations seen as a package is better than no regulation at all. What that means is that you can't look at a single regulation and think that you can quantify definitively whether it benefits or harms the economy. It's part of a package, and as a package we're better off having rules than not having them.